Hello guys, I hope you enjoyed that new intro. If you did, let's leave some love for it down below in the comments. My name is Josh, you're watching Perfect Timepiece. We are going to be comparing the Seiko SKX173 to the Steinhart Ocean 500 Titanium. Both of these watches were loaned to me by viewers like you, so let's hop into it. Thank you guys so much. Hello guys, and welcome. We've switched our views here. We're now looking at the SKX173, and we are comparing it to the Steinhart Ocean 500 Titanium, baby. My friend Ray sent me this SKX173 to look at, and my buddy Ernie sent me this Steinhart to look at. So thank you guys for sending these my way. The SKX is just about to go out, but I wanted to shoot this video. So let's get into the comparison. The first category we are going to talk about is value. Now this SKX173, if you watched my comparison with the Christopher Ward Trident Pro, you'll know that this watch gets a 7.5 out of 10 in the value category. This watch is $225, and it has a non-hacking, non-hand-winding movement, which is a little bit disappointing for this price. There are some Orient divers, granted they don't have the same history or legacy as this watch here, but they are cheaper and they do have that hacking and hand winding bit. So I give it a 7.5 out of 10 because I do think it is slightly above average, just because of the design that it gives you, the legacy that it gives you. This diver is legendary here. But I do think that 7.5 out of 10 is warranted. Now, let's move on to the Steinhart. I think that this Steinhart, here, hopefully the camera can actually focus. It's been having some issues. But I think that this is just half a point above the SKX in terms of the value that it offers. Although this Steinhart is double the price of the SKX, it does have a hacking and hand-winding movement. It has the ETA 2892, I believe. 2892 A2, which is hacking and hand-winding. You can see the beautiful decoration here done by Steinhart, and this is a top grade ETA 2892, so it's a great movement. In addition, it has very similar build quality to the SKX 173, and it does have, you know, a little bit, some features that are nice to have, a little bit of a better bezel with a ceramic insert. Those types of things that make the watch kind of stand out. Moving on, the second part of our comparison is movement. And I already kind of talked about this with the SKX 173, but this movement has, it doesn't have hacking or hand winding, which is a little bit disappointing, but it does have that day and that date wheel, and it has, I believe, a 38-hour power reserve. So all of those things are pretty nice. It operates at 6 ticks per second. So I do think that it is a pretty average movement. It is very well regarded. It's very robust, very reliable. But again, it doesn't have that hacking and hand winding, which can be a little bit of a pain when you're trying to use this watch, you know, sporadically, or if you change watches on your wrist a lot, you're going to have to wind this and wear it to get it going again. On the other hand, you know, as I was saying earlier, this Steinhart here, and maybe I can, is that better? The camera focus better like that, maybe? All right. This Steinhart here has the top grade ETA 2892 A2 movement. which is very, very nice. It drives that date wheel at the 6 o'clock position, in addition to the very legible and well-designed hands. We'll talk more about the design in a future section here. But it is pretty nice. You know, the SKX173 back here has 200 meters of water resistance, while this watch has 500. And I do think the reason I bring that up is I think it's amazing that Steinhart was able to get this display back case on here and keep that 500 meters of water resistance. It is a simply beautiful movement that is well decorated, and you know, especially considering that this watch is about $550 US. So pretty amazing there. I'm going to put it back. Okay, now we are going to talk about the design of both of these pieces. And I think that this is actually a pretty even category. I think they both get an 8.5 out of 10 in the design category. Now let me kind of tell you why. I think that the SKX173 is definitely more of a retro design. It has kind of that interesting little decoration or knurling on the bezel. It has a nice polished and brushed case here with a very iconic and angular crown protectors at the 4 o'clock position, and it has that Seiko Sumo at the back, or Seiko Tsunami, excuse me. So I do think that this is pretty well designed. It is a retro kind of classic look. I think a lot of people will prefer this piece because of the design over the Steinhart, but that's okay. The Steinhart is a much more modernly designed, very legible piece, and that's kind of what drew me to it. Legibility is a big thing for me personally, but I do think that the design in terms of how it's used is a little bit better. I'll get to that in a moment, but this is, of course, a titanium case. It doesn't have that brushed, or it doesn't have the polish and brushing on the case. It just has the brushed, but I think it works pretty well. It's got that signed crown there, which is always nice to see. And of course it has that display back. I think the actual display back is stainless steel, but the rest of the watch is titanium, of course. So again, I do think this is more of a modern interpretation of the diving look, and for that reason, I think, you know, a lot of people won't like it, but I do, and I think, you know, it'll age well, and it'll be a piece that is outstanding in your collection for years. So I think they both earn an 8.5 out of 10 in the design category. All right, we are going to move into usability, or how these watches, how usable they are in daily life. Now, the SKX has a few notches on it. One, because the movement doesn't hack or hand wind, as I've talked about before, but also because the bezel is a little bit hard to use, and it feels a little bit rubbery. So I just got to turn this all the way around. Hopefully I get it perfect here. There we go. So it is a little bit rubbery, a little hard to use. The crown is a little hard to unscrew. I'm not even going to show you guys that because it'll take too long. The strap is decent. It's comfortable. It's a little high when it sits on the wrist. So if you're wearing this with a dress shirt, you might be out of luck. But I think it's still above average, slightly above average, considering you know, how much it costs and everything. So I do think that it earns a 7.5 out of 10 in the usability category. Now, the Steinhart is pretty exceptional in terms of usability. You know, this titanium case is much much more scratch resistant than steel. So that's nice to see. It has the sapphire glass, whereas the SKX only has hardlex crystal. It has a ceramic bezel insert that actually has lume inside of it, which is a very interesting and neat feature. The SKX only has the painted on bezel, so it doesn't have that ceramic bezel. I do think the little bezel edge here, the knurling, or whatever it's called, is a little bit easier to use on the Steinhart. And the crown is exceptionally easy to unscrew, and the watch is very easy to wind as well, which is pretty amazing and really useful for, everyday use. Although you don't have to wind it every day, because this watch has a 40-hour power reserve. And it does kind of curve. The overall curvature of the watch is nice. The only thing that keeps this watch from a perfect score in usability is the domed sapphire. I don't know if you guys are able to see that dome there. But it does make the watch a little hard to read at some angles. And I guess, if you're moving your wrist a lot, then I think it could potentially scratch on something. But honestly, I think they designed the domed sapphire crystal into the case pretty well, so it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb or anything. Let's move on to the overall quality of these two pieces. Now, obviously, I think it would be a little bit unfair to say that there is no difference in the quality in these pieces. I think that the quality of the Seiko SKX is pretty standard for the price. Maybe a little bit better. I would give it a 7 out of 10 in quality. The finishing on the indices on the face of the watch is pretty good for the price, but it isn't as clean or nicely finished as the Steinhart. Again, we talked about little things like the painted on bezel. The lume is pretty nice on this watch, but it isn't as clean, I would say, as the Steinhart. You do have the nice polishing and finishing on the case, but you don't have a signed crown, which is kind of disappointing, and you don't have that display case back here. But you do have the nice embossing. So I do think it is pretty standard in terms of the quality of this piece, so I'm going to give the SKX here a 7 out of 10. Now moving on, because we want to keep the video short, we're going to talk about the Steinhart Ocean 500. Just a quick note, I'm sure I've missed things, so leave a comment down below if I miss something. But the quality on this piece is incredible. The finishing on the level of detail on the indices are amazing, and even on the hands too. I forgot to mention the hands on the SKX. The hands on this Steinhart are painted perfectly, including the little second hand there, which is hard to do. The back of the second hand is actually painted black. You can see it there on the minute hand. And it is a really, really good touch. It adds to the legibility of the piece. And really, the overall design and finish on this watch is pretty impeccable. The thing that kind of bugs me about this watch, there are two minor things that keep this from a perfect 10. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the width of the bezel here. It is pretty wide. There are some finishing issues with the titanium. There are a few nicks in the metal here. It's kind of hard to see. I hope the camera is able to pick it up for you guys. But if it's not, I'm sorry. I do think they did a pretty good job with the titanium, but it isn't as flawless as the stainless steel. And also, this crystal reflects light really, really easily. You guys can see my light box there. So I do, they double coated it with some AR coating, but I do think because of the domed shape of it, it is reflecting more light than I am used to. So let us tally up the scores and give a final analysis of these watches so you guys can run and tell your friends all about what I think about these two watches. Again, this is my opinion. Everyone has an opinion, and they all stink. So this SKX 173 here, it has a total score of 75 out of 100 points, which is still pretty good considering the age of the watch. I think it would be an amazing addition to anyone's collection if they had the $225. Now, of course, if you're looking for something more modern, something a little bit more legible, something that looks a bit more like a Rolex Submariner, that type of thing, although they are extremely different, I would have to say. If you do want that exhibition case back, and you do have $550 to spend on a watch, I think this watch earns a 85 out of 100 points. So, it's 10% better, for double the price. Is that good? I think it's good. I think this has some features that the SKX doesn't have. So I do think that they both have a place in the market. I hope that you guys have enjoyed our review, and thank you for watching. That's my thumb. I'm giving a thumbs up. I will see you all next time. Bye, guys.